Hey, y'all. Hey, my name is Annette, and I am here from Word on the Curb podcast. I'm especially excited tonight because we're going to continue the conversation on immigration, but I have one of my producers here, Christina Sasso.
Hey,
You want to introduce yourself and tell them a little bit about you and what you do?
my name is Christina Sasso. My husband and I, Frank, have a business called New Pod City, where we are the only hosting company for podcasts in New Jersey. But we also have a network of podcasts on our feed.
They do a phenomenal job. They keep me interested, and that's a tough job.
Thank you,
So, hey, Frank.
Frank.
And
Frank's in another meeting.
is he the good for
He's not
him?
with us. He's upstairs at another meeting.
Okay, so we're just meeting tonight. As you both are aware, this is not a very long podcast. And so, Jean, welcome back. I'm
Yes,
going
ma'am.
to
Thank you.
ask
Pleasure to
you
be here.
to give us a short wrap up about last week. Just catch us up.
Yeah, so I thought last week was very, very interesting, especially as it related to what risks illegal immigration poses to us, the burden that they put on systems and budgets and stuff like that. So I thought that conversation went very well, and I also thought that some information that might not have been known to people is that when you look at illegal immigrants, they pay state, federal, and local taxes, and they don't get the benefits of those taxes. Like if they're getting a check from a company, then they get the taxes taken out, but they can't like file for income tax, and they can't get all of those benefits. And so I thought it was a really, really cool conversation. And then I think we left off talking about, you don't want to be a whiner about a problem. So what's the solution to this problem, right? And so I think that's where we left off. I thought it was really, really cool. I thought that can't remember the name of the person, but their comments in the feed were very interesting. And so I did post. I think I mentioned about the school district, because the impact that that the immigrant are having on the school district. With most recently, a couple of years ago, we had to open additional schools because the enrollment was growing such. And so I thought that was a very nice conversation also.
It was interesting, and I want to thank you for that catch up. And
Yeah.
what we spoke to was you raised the issue of them contributing billions in taxes, which they do. I told you I would do my homework.
Yes, ma'am.
You're 100% right. The controversy comes in for healthcare, education, and social services as to the balance.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of controversy about the balance, and the statistics and numbers have yet to weigh out to a balance.
Mm-hmm.
And so we know that there's a tremendous impact. We know that, what's the number, Gene? Is it 60% uh, Latina in the school system?
Yes. It's 55 and change are immigrant population in special education. So that leaves 45% or so being African American and other.
Another, right. And
Mm-hmm.
so just the impact of that alone in trying to balance the education system is a challenge all by itself. So let's hit it, you guys.
Mm-hmm.
What we want to talk about tonight is I sent you the information for
Mm-hmm.
some background and context
Mm-hmm.
relative to undocumented immigration. But before I go, I, I want to remind you to
Okay.
eat food, drink water, wash your hands and face, and mind your business. This is the business. Come on, Gene, lead us out.
Yeah. So as I read through the topic of discussion, I think that the only thing that's really going to rectify this is from my standpoint, is comprehensive. I think I mentioned that too. Comprehensive immigration reform, right? So we keep sticking band-aids on a problem that's a huge problem, right? And so like as I think about it, keeping illegal immigrants from entering the country is a big thing, but there's a number of other things that are also important. So you think about enhanced border security. So there's a big investment that needs to be made there. We also have, I think, one of the real barriers is the discussion around pathways to citizenship, right? Like who deserves that? So it's very complex. Another one would be the DACA, right? So those children that were brought here or born here, what is their pathway? So it's really complex. And I think but the big thing is that we can't get bipartisan cooperation on the matter. And I just think it's the nature of the country. We got border states, and then you have like the states like New York who just got buried with illegal immigration. And so there needs to be authentic discussions around it, right? And I don't think that there has been in a very long time. So that would just be my thought. And then can we, when you think about us, we live in New Jersey, is there anything that New Jersey could do to help the process? Because if we keep up this rate, I think I mentioned on the last one that we're opening another school. We're going to be building, the SDA is building us a school in the south part of the city, because that's where the population is growing. So, right. And so something really has to happen, but we can't continue to put band-aids on this because it's not in the best interest of all of us. Just my 2 cents.
Thank you. Before I move to Christina, what I want to make abundantly clear is that I don't think there's one person on this call who is against a better way of life for anybody.
That's right.
That's not it. It is the lack of effective reform. It's also, no matter what's going on, nobody should have the right to storm our borders unchecked. And that's my position. Christina?
Well, I totally agree. As you know, I agree. The beauty of
Gene, that's a lot of noise.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
You can mute your mic.
The beauty of this country is that we're so diverse and it's interesting. But I do feel that just wide open borders is a mistake for us at this point. And I heard someone say recently, as I was kind of researching this, that we need to fix ourselves kind of first before we open the doors and let others come in and have to now fix those problems. So I think we in the United States as citizens have to get our house clean first. And then we should then say, okay, now let's look at who can come in. We want people that bring something to the table. I want people that can bring a skill or a point of view or something that's going to make our country better. But just wholesale, let everybody come in and do whatever they want. I just don't think that that's the way we should be going right now.
It absolutely is not. It absolutely is not. And for those who are listening now and will tune in later, let me be clear. Let me clear my throat. Nobody from anywhere should be able to storm our borders unchecked. They were protesting in New York, I think just recently I read, because the governor and the elected officials in New York had decided that it would be better to, and I want to eventually get back to the policy, but this is important, better to give them debit cards to purchase food than it would be to take food to them. because they were wasting food and didn't want the food that they were getting. And culturally, you understand that there are some differences and there are issues presenting. But let me just be clear. There has to be a legal pathway. And for any Latina who doesn't understand and respect that, hold on to that. Donald Trump is coming, and you're not going to like it. And before he gets here, we as the American people ought to have some consensus and some solidarity about how we create legal pathways to citizenship. But storming our borders is not the answer. And I take it personal. I pay taxes.
Mhm.
I don't know who's living next door to me. I don't know. You never know who's living next door to you, but we certainly have no idea what's happening right now. We don't even know who's here.
Mhm.
Chris?
Well, I have the same concerns as you do. We don't really know who our neighbors are, which, okay, I live in a city. I don't know who all my neighbors, a lot of them. We live kind of in a small town. But when people are coming in undocumented, unregistered, with false IDs and so on, we don't know where they're coming from, what they're coming with. And, we've heard a lot of things about
They
gang.
open prisons and dump people in. That's
Yeah,
exactly what they did.
yeah.
That's not all of them,
No,
but that's enough of them.
again, I'm of the mindset, and maybe you disagree, and that's fine, of closing the borders until we figure out what's going on inside inside the borders, and getting people who are basically criminals and getting them out of the country. Like, I feel like a lot of country have dumped their, you know, their
Undocumented
yeah,
criminals into this country, and they have. And that's not to say just Latinas. This
no,
is about undocumented immigration, period. So before you get on your high horse and come, you better come prepared.
well, here's
We're
the thing.
talking.
It's easiest for Latinos and Hispanic people to come into the country because there's an easy path. Like someone from Pakistan can't just, come through the border. They'd have to fly over here and then figure out a way in. So that's, you know, that's why I guess the focus is on the Latino community, because there's more easy access.
Over the waters and through the woods
Mhm.
to the United States they come. And people deserve opportunity, but there has to be a check and balance.
Mhm.
There has to be. And so,
It's
although America is taking their taxes,
Mhm.
how it balances out in healthcare, which is huge,
Mhm.
education, for us alone, healthcare is out of control. Imagine undocumented immigrants.
What about our
No
veterans?
matter- Yeah,
Like,
what about our veterans who are on the street? They don't get a debit card. They fought in this country for this country. We're
Mhm.
free. We live free. We can walk free because of them.
Right,
And they're sleeping in sleeping bags on the street
right,
with mental health issues. They're
right,
homeless. There are a host of other issues going on. We have to straighten our business out.
right.
And in doing that, that requires some comprehensive policy that leads to a legal pathway. I'm not opposed to closing the borders until we can figure out.
Mhm.
How about you, Gene? Brother Gene?
Yes, yeah. So I'm not so much about and for closing the borders. I'll tell you why. There are some people who really need to escape where they're living. They have children. I think that the bigger problem for us lies is that the systems are antiquated. They can't process people. They can't evaluate people. I mean, if the you mentioned veterans and it just clicked in my mind, the veteran systems are terrible, and that's why
They're
veterans
horrible.
aren't getting benefits, right?
They're
And
horrible.
and so if they won't invest money in that, I'm sure they're not investing money in the systems that are going to help keep us safe as it relates to immigration. And I think that is the biggest problem. When you think of the millions or even billions of dollars that's
Yeah.
been spent on housing folks coming from other places. The fact that you can't upgrade your systems effectively so you could wean out people before they get here. If they show up, they don't get in. There's no efficiency with that. I think that's the problem. And, it's like the elephant in the room. Nobody wants to talk about the antiquated systems, right? Because
nobody wants to talk about our veterans on the street. Nobody wants to talk about people who live here in America who are hungry, homeless, and suffering. Nobody wants to talk about the lack of health care for seniors. Nobody wants to talk about a senior who has to make a choice between paying their rent and eating. And sometimes they end up eating literally cat food and dog food to survive. Nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to have the difficult conversation about immigration because they're afraid of offending people. I don't want to offend anybody, but I want to be clear. America and the people in this country ought to have the first opportunities, and they're not getting it.
Absolutely. Yep.
Totally agree.
I don't want to deny anybody a fair opportunity or the right to participate, but I'll be diggity doggone square if I'm going to support giving undocumented anybody, I don't care where they come from, an opportunity to eat when our people here are hungry. Are you kidding me? And homeless? Get a grip. Get a grip.
Right.
That's the reality of what we're dealing with. So let's get to policy and how effective policy. So when I speak of closing the borders, I want to close the borders and I want one way in.
We got a big country, girl. Well, now when you say what I would like, and I don't know if it exists because I'm not familiar enough, right? But if everybody's not following the same policies and practices, that's problematic for me, right? So where people aren't treated the same, the policies and practices aren't the same, because that's how people beat the system, right? And that's just my 2 cents, right? That things might be strenuous on the southern border, but on another border where people, so we don't know literally how these people are getting
people
in.
Who look like me, people who look like Chris, realistically, they have to go through the process.
Yeah.
And you said it, Brother Junior, because
it really is sad. It's sad. It's sad.
It's so easy for others.
Yeah, it's so sad. And like for me, this problem ain't a new problem. This problem is generations old. You mean to tell me with all these brilliant people, they couldn't figure this thing out? And then I become suspect. Who's benefiting from it?
The rich folks. The rich
folks. Who's really benefiting from it?
The rich folks who don't pay them a living wage. They have to live 20 to a house to support themselves. And then they claim they work so hard when there's 20 of them getting paid less than what they should be.
Right, less than many of them paid,
Right? Yeah. So they pool their resources. And if they buy a house, 10 of them might be in one house. But the bottom line is just they're creating another underclass in America because they are not paying undocumented immigrants fairly. They are not providing, through their tax dollars, access to the services that they would deserve. But hey, let's face it, they're not providing those services for our veterans either. They're not providing those services for our senior citizens either. And that's the reality. And that's the reality that I'm talking about. I think everybody deserves a fair opportunity, but a fair opportunity. Just because you're willing to work for a lower wage for the rich folks doesn't mean you can storm our borders. And that's who's protecting them. The people
I know.
who are benefiting most from them.
Yeah, one of the things that was troubling, and I'm just recalling our last conversation, is the potential negative impact of mass deportation, but we have a need for, I'm going to say, essential workers. And so that's a process issue. How do you get the people you want and keep the people you don't want away? And I don't think they've thought a lot about it. Like, for example, if you look at, I'll use agriculture, right? The picking of crops and stuff. So without having crops picked, that negatively impacts our economy because it raises prices. But then if those are the people you need, to Christina's point earlier, then you ought to be qualifying the people you need and ensuring that those people come in who provide a direct benefit and not people that don't want to be productive. You know what I'm saying? Just because people want to escape where they are to live the American dream and they're not willing to contribute to
Americans
the success
can't
of
live the
America,
American dream.
you know?
Americans can't live the American dream.
Mhm.
When we talk about dismantling that system, when we talk about solidarity for brown and black relative to undocumented immigration, not before we talk about Americans who don't have the opportunity, not because they don't want it, as the media has portrayed, but because it's not available to them. We have to talk about that. And these conversations are uncomfortable for people because they fear being attacked by those who support undocumented immigration. I don't support undocumented immigration. Let me be clear. I do not. Everybody
I
should have
don't.
to come in the right way.
To what you were saying about the rich people benefiting or people who have employees that are illegal immigrants.
Undocumented.
They're illegal because the minute they come through that border,
Okay.
they're a crime. They have come into our country illegally. So they're already criminals in that sense, because think about all the people who did it the right way. The people who waited online, waiting for papers, it's an insult to those people.
Right.
Do you just feel like, well, I have a reason for coming and I'm going to do this illegal activity because I need to come through? But my point is about people who are hiring illegal immigrants is that it's okay when it services their purpose.
Right.
And I can get someone to work for me for half whatever minimum wage is.
The cost. That's right.
Get a whole group of people and cut my costs. Then it services me, so that's why I'm okay with it. But then on this side, well, I don't like this part about it.
Right.
You can't say it's good 1 foot in this camp and 1 foot in that camp. You've got to take a stand and say either I'm going to just do the wrong thing or I got to do the right thing and live with the consequences here. If you're a business owner, you have to say I have to pay my employees a
living wage.
Living wage, right?
They don't want to do that.
And that's crazy. That's crazy because they're breaking the law, right? Yeah. So they're breaking the law because if you, let's say, and this is hypothetical, right? Let's say that I find out that a group of folks that are working for me are illegal. Don't I have a responsibility to ensure they go through the legal? If I need them, then how can I facilitate that? Not to take advantage of them or exploit them, exploiting the labor. I think that's illegal. It's immoral, right?
Yes.
Don't get me started with that. That's a low life, right?
Money. Money. So let's just say I have a business and I've hired undocumented immigrants. Right. Then I should have a responsibility to ensure that they're not criminals.
Right.
They're not rapists or murderers.
Right.
We have enough of those right here.
Right.
By ourselves.
Yeah, right.
They're not going to pose a threat to us, right? Right. And help them come in or
the right way.
Get through the right way. So if they're working for me, then I should have a responsibility as the
I
employer,
agree.
and I should be checked.
That's
That
right.
employer should be checked because they'll do anything to make money, right?
Yeah.
To ensure that the people who are working for me get a legal pathway if they're already
That's
here.
right. That's right.
Is
That's right.
that's fair, right?
I just, of course, that's because the problem we have is these people running around here who are undocumented, so they're illegal, and then people who are exploiting their
Right.
situation
They
for
are
money, which
exploiting
is
them.
terrible. Yes, it's a terrible thing. Yeah, it's
Here
really
in
terrible.
Trenton alone, they're charging them. They're not supposed to have unregistered boarding houses, but they do, and they're charging them like $1,000 a room.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's
So
exploitation.
yeah, they're exploiting them.
Mm-hmm.
And so people who would rather fight against legal pathways cry about those of us who believe people deserve an opportunity. If they're here working, vet them, get them in legally, let the employer be responsible for whatever fees are associated with them,
Mm-hmm.
and then they pay up front and their businesses don't suffer, but they're not willing to do that.
Yeah,
They'd
it's
rather
just
keep
sad.
them in an undocumented situation and take advantage of how they pay them, how they rent, how they provide for them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you take a look around Trenton, we'll get back to this another time. Just a shout out. Unverified money, purchasing restaurants, bars, hair salons, housing, unverified money. In some parts, the banks are being held responsible for verifying the money that comes into those banks.
They are.
Right? But a lot of people who are doing illegal business and have money that can't be verified are circumventing the banks.
Yeah, the process sucks.
When you talk about getting on top of this game, that's
Yeah.
Well, the people that are using the system are also using the system to bring in money that's illegally gotten from whatever.
Whoa.
Could be
Unverified sources.
The money through seemingly legit businesses.
That's right.
You know, so that's another pathway to bring this unverified money that you're talking about into the country. It's so
Christina, thank you for that. Because let me ask you a question without naming any particular culture, right? How do people live in war torn countries that come over here and have millions to invest in this country? Verify the source of income.
Right.
How does that happen? If you look around Trenton, just take a look at who's buying up all the properties. There's a change.
Yeah, where's that money coming from? Yeah.
Change came. Who's verifying that money? Not the banks.
The system is so overwhelmed.
That's what's happening. It's overwhelmed. And it's overwhelmed because we don't have legal pathways, no matter where they come from. This is not about Latinas. So get up off that train. This is about undocumented immigrants.
Period.
So back to my first argument, which is we've got to get our house in order so that we can then, extend those arms and offer those opportunities, just like we've always done for hundreds of years. But our house is kind of a mess right now, I think.
We are a mess.
A hot mess.
It's another conversation. We're not going to get into that. That's another conversation. We're a mess. America is a mess. Right now, America is a mess. But
I don't have to come over my house until I clean. You're not coming over until I've dusted and mopped the floor, clean the bathrooms.
We need to create legal pathways, starting with these employers who are benefiting from undocumented immigrants, it should begin with them because that's a large part of the problem. It should begin with them
If
that
I'm
they
wrong,
assist in creating legal pathways for the people who are working for them.
correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't it used to be, because I seem to remember both my grandparents in through both islands, but when they came, they had to have, first of all, they had to be healthy. They were examined. They had to speak some English. They either have a relative living here or prove some kind of employment. I don't know if that still, I don't think that's still in effect, obviously.
None of it is in effect because they're storming our borders.
Right.
And we'll have people who are engaged, married, or involved with undocumented immigrants, employers who will fight for their right to be here undocumented. They have a responsibility. And let me tell you where that begins, because there's a lot of confusion about this. It begins with ensuring that your employees have health care. They deserve that. Ensuring that the taxes they pay benefit them. Employers should have to contribute to their legal pathway. Now, when you start, watch
Right.
the employers start to run.
Yeah, it would be great if people coming in had some kind of job set up or some kind of that now the employer could ease the road, you know,
The employer who's
not
benefiting from undocumented immigration
this way.
by paying them a lower wage, no health insurance, no health insurance. So if you guys want to fight because you're attached to an undocumented immigrant, you better start fighting for their rights and not to storm our borders, but to have what they need to sustain and be a part of this community, the American community.
Yeah, I think when we say a pathway to documentation, and it needs to be clear too. It's kind of ambiguous because it shouldn't be so challenging for the process. All right. So if I have relatives here, then I have a place to stay, but I need to have a job because with a job should come, like you mentioned, health insurance. So I'm not a burden. And then if I have a decent job, then I'm not a ward of the state, so to speak. So tax dollars aren't going to sustain me. And I think those may be things that, we're always talking about at the federal level, but at the state and local levels, are those some of the things that could be put in place to take some of the burden? Because it's negatively impacting state and local budgets too, right?
Listen,
and so a different approach to that.
Brother Gene, they could be. If the employers who are employing them in everywhere would take some responsibility. They don't want to take it because that means that they become less rich. If that's a word, less rich. But hey, we need to wrap this up. So I'm going to give each of you a chance to make an impact statement regarding undocumented immigration and policy, because we spoke more about the challenges than we did the policy. But we'll come back again. So let's have an impact statement. Brother Gene, let's begin with.
Oh, you want me to go first? Okay, because I was going to do ladies before gentlemen since Christina. Oh, hi, Christina. I didn't even get to say hey to you today. Good to see you. I think that the employers have a responsibility to ensure documentation happens. Absolutely. I also think that from a policy perspective, that both state and local officials have to get creative and innovative about how we address this, right? So if I'm being overpopulated by undocumented immigrants, then
Yes.
how do I get them documented so that they could become productive and contributors? And because
That's right.
the problem lies when
And
they aren't
benefit from the
doing
taxes
anything.
they pay. And
Yeah.
benefit from the taxes they pay.
Yes. Because I think when local and state officials aren't proactive about it, it allows the exploitation of people, and
That's right.
that for me is morally corrupt. And so I think that a different approach to this, waiting on DC to fix this problem, isn't going to get the problem solved quickly, because folks are burdening our local budgets, and so something has to happen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Christina?
Well, I just want to say that no one has a right to go to another country. It's a privilege. It's a
It
privilege,
is.
not a
And
right.
you just recently traveled, so you know.
Yes, and that's how they are in Italy. You can't just go in there and do what you want. It's
That's
it's
right.
a privilege to live in this country. People have fought and died for the right to be here, the right to have a home, to raise their children, to get an education. So it's not an outsider's right, and it's
Mm-hmm.
not, you can just come in and say, well, I have a right to, no, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be a citizen of this country for the privilege of living here, and that privilege was dearly paid for by our ancestors, and that can't be forgotten. So we need to weigh this very carefully about who is coming in and what is the benefit to our communities,
Mm-hmm.
our states, our countries on the whole. It can't just be a free-for-all.
And that's what it's been, a free-for-all. And my impact statement would be that undocumented immigration reflects the universal pursuit of a better life, which I agree with. I don't disagree with that. What I disagree with is employers having the right to use undocumented immigrants, not assist in a legal pathway, and not have any responsibility to the people that they are, in fact, exploiting. My name is Annette. I am the host here at Word on the Curve, and no matter what happens, we must honor human dignity.
Amen.
That does not mean we disagree with the right for people to have a better way of life and to experience the American dream. But here's what I want to tell you. Before we think about anybody else, it's
Think
not
about us.
selfish to think about self-preservation.
That's right.
It's not selfish to think that our veterans deserve that same right. It's not
That's right.
selfish to think about the homeless in this country deserve that same right. It's not selfish to believe that the mentally ill deserve that same right. So when you come for us, come prepared. We
Mm-hmm.
support a better way of life for everybody, but you don't have the right to crash.
Mm-hmm.
And employers don't have the right to not assist in helping undocumented immigrants come to a legal pathway by
That's
supporting
right.
them. They're supporting your lifestyle. They're
Yes.
supporting support their opportunity to immigrate legally.
Yeah.
Employers. My name is Annette. I'm here from Word on the Curb. My producers are Frank and Christina Sasso, and I am happy to be here tonight. Brother Gene, I thank you. You know we're coming back for a third and final segment. Christina, we want you to join us for a third and final segment because what we want to discuss in that segment is the misunderstanding of undocumented immigration and how we can contribute and fight for policy that supports a legal pathway. I want to thank you for being here this evening with Word on the Curve podcast. Thank you and have a good night. You guys hang behind for a minute, please.
Okay.